Have you ever wondered why she stares just a second too long, then looks away like she's afraid to be caught? Why she says you're not her type, but checks your Instagram stories at midnight from a burner account? Why she mentions her ex right after you show confidence, but lingers around as if waiting for you to say something reckless? Let me make something very clear from the start if you've ever felt this dissonance, where her words and her behavior don't match. It's not because you're delusional, it's because you're the type of man women secretly crave, and she doesn't know what to do with it. See, when you carry a kind of presence that's not dependent on chasing, impressing, or performing, you don't fit the script. Most women are trained to anticipate one of two things: the desperate approval seeker or the arrogant manipulator. Either he bends over backward to win her, or he weaponizes her insecurities to gain control. Both are predictable, both are safe to decode. But when you're not asking for anything, not signaling thirst, not trying to be liked, you become a threat to her emotional control. That's when it starts. The games, the provocations, the silence tests, the fake indifference. She may even tell herself you're too boring, too serious, or not enough fun. But if she was truly indifferent, she wouldn't need to explain herself. Indifference doesn't require defense. What she's really afraid of is how calm you are, how little you seem to need her, that quiet self-containment that unnerves her more than any line you could speak. And this is the paradox no one talks about. Women crave the man who doesn't chase, but they are terrified of not being chased, especially by the man they feel something for. Because the moment they realize you won't be swayed by their curves, their validation, or their withdrawal, that's when they begin to unravel. And if you don't understand what's happening, you'll think something's wrong with you. You'll think you missed a cue, failed a test, or didn't try hard enough. But the truth is, you passed every test by not playing. You're the man she thinks about when she's alone. Not because you gave her butterflies, but because you made her feel exposed. You didn't fall into her orbit. You didn't orbit her at all. And when a man doesn't orbit, a woman has to look inward, and most of them are not ready for what they find. That's why she ghosted you. That's why she started arguments over nothing. That's why she flirted with your friend at that party and then looked at you while doing it. She wasn't trying to hurt you. She was trying to force a reaction, any reaction that would prove she still had power over your emotions. But you stayed calm, and that's what made her want you even more. You see, it's not about your looks, not your car, not your money. It's about your center. When a woman feels that you are grounded in something deeper than her approval, she feels both scared and turned on. Because now, she's not in control. She's not the one holding the emotional gun. And for a woman who's used to manipulating weaker men through praise, withholding, or chaos that is disarming, if you've ever been told you're too intense, too serious, or too emotionally unavailable after you refused to beg for attention, that wasn't criticism. That was her confession. If she calls you mysterious, what she really means is, I can't figure out how to make you want me more than I want you. And if she says you're hard to read, it's because she's not used to being with a man who doesn't spill his intentions like a puppy waiting to be pet. You want the truth. Most women can only feel attraction after they feel tension. Tension created by the possibility of rejection, mystery, or unpredictability. If she knows where she stands with you too early, the game is over, and she needs the game, because the game is how she protects her ego. The game is how she avoids falling burst. So when you bypass the game entirely, when you're just present, stable, uninterested in chasing, you don't just confuse her, you expose her. That's why she brings up other guys in front of you. That's why she says she's too busy, but posts selfies at dinner with a caption saying bored. She wants to know if she can hook you emotionally without ever having to admit she wants you. She wants to see if she can control your mood without giving you anything. And when you don't budge, when you don't rage, when you don't over-explain, that silence becomes louder than any compliment you could have given. You think you're being punished for not being enough, but in reality, you're being tested for being too much, too grounded, too still, too unaffected. That's the kind of man who doesn't beg. That's the kind of man who doesn't need to convince. That's the kind of man women think about when they're alone in bed, wondering why they feel empty after entertaining 10 others. You've probably been told that if a woman is acting cold, distant, or inconsistent, it's because she's not interested. That's the conventional advice. And sure, sometimes it's true, but not always. The truth is more complex and more dangerous for your peace of mind. Because if you're the kind of man who carries quiet intensity, a clear sense of self, and emotional restraint, her erratic behavior might not be disinterest, it might be panic. Let's break this down. When a woman meets a man who sees her but doesn't fall for the act, something short-circuits in her system. She's used to male attention being instant, easy, and predictable. A certain smile, a certain tone of voice. And most guys cave. But you didn't. You stayed composed. You didn't reward her subtle bait. You weren't rude, but you weren't hungry either. That's not rejection. That's something worse in her mind, uncertainty. And that's when she flips. She pulls back emotionally, hoping you'll chase. She flirts with someone else in front of you. She mocks your seriousness, pokes at your masculinity, asks why you're so quiet. But it's not because you're boring, it's because you broke her script. She needs you to return to the familiar dance where she dangles the carrot and you keep jumping, but you didn't. And now, she doesn't know what to do with the craving you awakened. This is where most men fall apart. You start thinking, maybe I need to try harder. Maybe I was too distant. Maybe she needs reassurance. No, that's what she's counting on. Not consciously, but emotionally. Because if you start over-explaining yourself, pouring out attention, trying to clarify your intentions, you've already lost. You've made her comfort your mission. You've shifted from grounded to grasping. She will never admit this. But once she knows she can control your emotional state, her attraction drops fast. Even if she wanted you before. Even if she imagined being with you in ways she couldn't with anyone else. Because women don't just respond to who you are. They respond to how much of yourself you're willing to give away to get them. The moment she sees you bend for validation, she labels you just like the rest. He was different at first, she'll tell her friends, but then he got weird, too clingy, too eager. What she's really saying is, I thought he was dangerous to my ego, but now he's safe, and I'm bored. You want to know if you're the type of man women secretly crave. Watch what happens when you say no. No to their mixed signals, no to the games, no to investing your time into conversations that go nowhere, no to reacting when she tries to provoke you emotionally, no to dropping everything just because she suddenly shows interest. The men women crave most are not the ones who validate them. They are the ones who discipline their own attention. And this isn't about being rude, it's about value, emotional value. The man who doesn't need female validation to feel like a man is dangerous to women who rely on control to feel powerful. That's why they'll often mock you before they admit they want you. They'll test your ego before they trust your leadership. They'll poke at your calm until they know it's not an act. And most men fail that test. Not because they're weak, but because they've been trained to believe that feminine approval equals worth. It doesn't. A woman will crave you more for the standards you uphold than the praise you give her. A woman will remember you for how little you needed her flattery to feel like yourself. She won't tell you this, but she'll notice it. She'll feel it in the way you hold eye contact without trying to impress her, in the way you listen without rushing to speak, in the way you say "I'm not available tonight" without explaining why. These are the behaviors that separate men women use from men they obsess over in silence. And let's be honest, some women don't want to admit they crave men like you, because to admit that would mean surrendering to something stronger than attention accountability. When a woman meets a man who doesn't fall for her mask, she's either forced to rise or run, and most will run. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were too much for the version of herself she currently lives in. So if she disappears after you show strength, don't chase. If she plays games after you stay grounded, don't play back. If she gets louder when you get quieter, don't flinch. These aren't signs you failed. These are signs you passed the test she didn't even know she was giving. You're not just the type of man she secretly craves. You're the type of man she'll regret pushing away. You've spent most of your life thinking that if a woman pulls away, it means you lacked something. That if she flirts and then vanishes, if she compliments you and then goes cold, if she sleeps with you and then ignores you, it must be because you weren't exciting enough, rich enough, dominant enough. But what if I told you that the very reason she's erratic is because you're already what she wants, and she doesn't know how to handle it? See, you're not like the men who orbit her. You don't respond to every story. You don't beg for attention, and you don't collapse when she withdraws. And because of that, she can't place you in the emotional categories she's built, the ones where she's in control, where she knows exactly how to trigger obsession, devotion, and desperation. You didn't bite. You didn't play the role. And now, her brain is searching for answers her ego won't allow her to speak out loud. Why didn't you chase when she pulled back? Why didn't you compliment her after she dressed up for you? Why did you sleep with her and not become emotionally clingy the next day? These aren't questions she'll ask you. These are questions she'll ask herself late at night, when the noise stops, and they'll haunt her. Because when a woman meets a man she can't manipulate with her usual moves, she only has two choices: evolve or escape, and most of them choose escape, but they never forget you. You become the shadow figure she compares every other man to, the quiet one, the solid one, the one who didn't flinch. You didn't dance when she played the music, and that silence, that restraint, that control, it digs under her skin because it revealed her patterns, her vanity, her emotional immaturity. You didn't expose her on purpose. You didn't need to. Your calm was the mirror. But most men don't survive this phase, because when she starts to punish you for being unmoved by ignoring you, by acting cold, by throwing another man in your face, you assume you did something wrong. You internalize it. You try to fix it. That's the trap. Because the moment you start chasing clarity from a woman who's offering chaos, you've already surrendered your power. What you don't realize is this: women don't crave men who fold under tension. They crave men who stay seated while the storm screams in their face. They crave men who aren't seduced by approval or threatened by silence. They crave men who don't need to win them, but invite them to earn proximity through consistency. That's what you represent. And that's why she's confused. Because craving you means she has to become better. And many women are addicted to the power they hold over weaker men. They're not ready to give it up. You need to understand something that will hurt. But free you, a woman will walk away from the man she desires most, if it means preserving her ego. Let that sink in. She will walk away from the man who makes her feel the most, because staying would require surrender, vulnerability, emotional exposure. And if she's built her identity on control, validation, and performance, then you, in all your grounded clarity, are a threat. That's why you never beg, never explain, never try to teach her your worth. Your job is not to prove your value. Your job is to protect it. A man who knows what he's worth does not advertise it. He doesn't post it on social media. He doesn't argue it in long texts. He doesn't fight for attention. He simply lives it and watches who rises to meet it. You don't reward flaky behavior with patience. You don't validate emotional chaos with empathy. You don't apologize for having standards. You stand firm. You hold eye contact. You speak with weight. And when she tests your emotional center, you don't react. That's silence. That calm. That's the real aphrodisiac. That's what keeps her awake after blocking you. That's what makes her check your profile from another account. That's what makes her mention your name to friends she pretends she's forgotten. Because deep down, she knows. The man she couldn't shake, the man who didn't chase, is the one she respected the most. Now, here's the hard part. You have to be willing to lose her to keep your self-respect. That's the line most men won't cross. They'd rather compromise their dignity for the possibility of another night, another message, another chance. But that's not power. That's emotional slavery. If she only responds when you lower your value. She was never attracted to your strength in the first place. She was attracted to your weakness. You have to stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and start asking, "What did I do right that scared her?" Most men will never see this. They'll chase ghosts, replay conversations, seek closure from a woman who never gave clarity to begin with. But not you. You're learning to see the pattern, and once you do, you realize this whole time it wasn't rejection. It was a test, not of your charm, but of your center. You've been told that women want vulnerability, softness, emotional availability. But when you gave her all of that early, unfiltered, and with no boundaries, what happened? She pulled away. She said she needed space. She said she wasn't ready. And you sat there, confused, thinking you did what a good man was supposed to do. You opened up. You made her feel safe. You proved you weren't like the others. And yet, she still left. Here's why most men confuse vulnerability with emotional exposure. But women don't crave a man who spills himself to gain closeness. They crave a man who owns his truth and doesn't need to bleed it out for validation. Your emotional strength isn't proven by how much pain you show, it's proven by how well you carry it. You see, a man who is deeply grounded doesn't fear silence. He doesn't rush to fill space with explanations or affection. He lets her feel the weight of his presence. He creates tension not by manipulation, but by not relieving her uncertainty too soon. That's the difference between need and impact. The man she forgets is the one who gave her everything too fast. The man she craves is the one who left her wondering, questioning, remembering. You think the guy she keeps texting is the one who was better. He wasn't. He was less available. He was less impressed by her beauty, less reactive to her teasing, less eager to impress. And because of that, he felt more powerful. That power isn't about domination, it's about mystery. It's about the unknown. It's about the fact that she couldn't figure him out. Most men try to create attraction by showing how emotionally open they are. But they forget the one ingredient that creates desire: emotional tension. And emotional tension doesn't come from vulnerability. It comes from restraint. It comes from presence without pursuit, from interest without attachment, from being able to look at her and not need anything in return. That's what makes her crave you, because now she has to work. She has to reveal herself. She has to earn access. And for women who are used to men falling at their feet, that is intoxicating, but it's also terrifying, because if she fails to capture your attention, what does that say about her power, her value, her desirability? And this is the part most men don't want to admit. Craving isn't just about pleasure, it's about submission. When a woman truly craves you, she starts adjusting herself. She starts changing her behavior. She becomes more feminine, softer, quieter, not because you asked her to, but because your presence demands it. She senses that you don't need her, but that you could take her deeper than she's ever gone. That's when the craving begins. That's when she stops pretending. That's when she stops performing. But that version of her doesn't show up if you chase, if you lower your standards, if you become emotionally reactive, if you let her chaos disturb your center. The craving only survives when you maintain your edge. And yes, it's lonely at first, because most women can't meet it. They'll flirt, tease, provoke, withdraw, but they won't stay. Not because you're not worthy, but because you're no longer convenient. Convenient men are easy to control. Craved men are dangerous. You don't beg. You don't explain. You don't rush to close the emotional gap. You let her feel it. You let her miss you. You let her wonder. That's when the illusion breaks. That's when she realizes that you were the prize all along. And make no mistake when she senses you're not swayed by beauty. When she sees that your peace isn't up for negotiation. When she knows that her behavior determines your access. That's when she decides whether to rise or disappear. Either way, you win, because you didn't compromise yourself to hold on to someone who only wanted the version of you that obeyed. Most men think that power is about control. It's not. Real power is about selectivity. Who you let close, who you respond to, who you allow to influence your energy. Women crave the man who doesn't need them but sees them, fully, calmly, without flinching. And they fear that man, too, because that man forces them to confront their games, their wounds, their control mechanisms. He doesn't fight them, he simply doesn't engage. He offers nothing they can use against him. No thirst, no emotional chaos, no desperation, just silence, just stillness, just presence. And the hardest part of being that man is accepting that she may never admit what she felt. She may never confess the pull, the obsession, the comparisons she made in her mind, because to say it would be to surrender, and not every woman is ready to do that. But that doesn't change the truth. You were never not enough. You were always more than she was ready to receive. So now you understand. You weren't rejected because you lacked something. You were rejected because you refused to hand it over too easily, because you didn't follow the script, because you didn't need her to feel like a man. That shook her, and she ran. Not away from you, but away from her own reflection. The one you forced her to see. She'll never admit that. Because to admit, it would mean admitting that the man she walked away from was the one she still thinks about when everything else feels hollow. It would mean that the quiet one, the stable one, the emotionally sovereign one, was the only man who ever saw her without bending to her. And that kind of truth, it burns. But here's what matters now: how you respond. Because this isn't about her anymore. It's about you. It's about the way you've been taught to abandon yourself for validation. The way you've been trained to perform, to adjust, to chase just to be tolerated. And it ends here. You are not here to prove your worth to women who test your masculinity with games. You are not here to save the broken by tolerating disrespect. You are not here to beg for consistency from someone who disappears the moment she feels seen. You are here to become the kind of man who doesn't need to be chosen because he chooses himself. That's where real attraction begins. Not when you make her laugh, not when you say the right things, not when you buy the dinners or listen to her trauma, but when you stand there, fully in your skin, and say, "This is who I am. This is what I tolerate, and this is what I don't." And then you walk away from anyone who tests that boundary. That's what drives women insane. Not in a manipulative way, but in a magnetic way. Because they realize you can't be moved by need. You only move for alignment. You don't reward disrespect with attention. You don't trade your peace for her confusion. You don't play tug of war with someone who's dangling the rope just to watch you pull. You let go of the rope, quietly, powerfully, and you watch her face change when she realizes she lost the one man who wasn't performing. Let other men chase. Let them overextend, over-explain, overcommit. Let them fall into the trap of trying to prove they're different while becoming exactly what she expects. You're not here to be expected. You're here to be felt deeply, confusingly, undeniably. And when you walk away, she remembers you, not for what you gave, but for what you withheld. Dignity, standard, mystery, detachment. These are not tactics. These are consequences of being whole. A whole man doesn't need closure. He doesn't need confirmation. He doesn't need to be told, "I miss you," to know that she does. He doesn't need the apology that will never come, because he already knows she lost more than he did. You want to know the final sign that you're the type of man women secretly crave. It's this: she treats every other man after you like a transaction, but she still thinks about you like a wound. Not a wound she wants to heal, a wound she wants to hide, because the moment she admits how deeply you moved her, she has to admit that she couldn't handle it. And that's the brutal truth most women carry in silence. They say they want a strong man, but when faced with one, they try to soften him, tame him, test him, until he becomes like the others, safe, predictable, disposable. But the man who doesn't fold, he leaves a mark that no one else can erase. So don't chase her, don't explain yourself, don't try to show her how much you cared. She already knows. That's why she ran. And one day, when the noise dies down, when the followers fade, when the attention no longer distracts her from the silence inside, she'll remember you. She'll remember the man who didn't ask for her, who didn't fight for crumbs, who didn't bend for the temporary, who walked away with quiet strength and never looked back. She didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect.